Welcome to Are You Afraid of the Dark? Season 1, Episode 4. I'm your horrid host, Mr. Dork, and I'm back and bigger than ever. Not that you'd be able to tell in light of how dark it is in here. Dear listener, you know I am not one to brag, but without putting too fine a point on it, I just got some work done, and let's just say neither my nightmarish tendrils nor my midnight purple pocket protector has ever looked sharper. I'd turn on the light so you can all bask in my glory for a sec, but the place I come from isn't called the Shadow Realm for nothing. Price of light bulbs here is so high that the overwhelming majority, myself included, can't afford them. Blah, blah, blah. It's not all bad, I suppose. Saves some trouble getting ready in the morning and makes first impressions considerably less high stakes when we're all not much to look at down here by virtue of being habitually enshrouded in darkness. A lack of light makes navigating new places a living hell to experience. I'll tell you that much. Anywho, enough about that. On to today's tale. One particular road less traveled by. A diabolically droll time delving into the perspective of one of my personally most maligned and otherwise reviled potential recreations. Poetry. A word of caution before we begin. This week's tale contains content many listeners might find disturbing, including a recitation of something commonly gone over in English classes, a tacked-on twist, and, most ghastly of all, a curse which I will sick upon all this story's listeners and readers who happen to be over 100 years old, who never once embodied the Christmas spirit. If any of these things apply to you, be warned. Are you ready? I certainly hope so, because my story begins in 3, 2, 2.5, 1, 1.5. Oh, whatever. Now. One particular road less traveled by. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller. Long I stood, and looked down as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 words diverged in a whatever. Like all great stories, this one began in the middle. More particular to this one, it was the middle of the woods. My journey began with a simple enough plan. I was to stalk these great woods in the hopes of encountering the ghost of Henry David Thoreau, so I could kill him again for a second time for his contributions to poetry. Hold on. That was mean of me. The word contributions in the previous context does a disservice to anyone who's legitimately contributed to anything ever. In the interest of fairness, I should have used the word butchering of, or at the very least put the original word in heavy quotation marks. You see, my parents always told me to follow my heart. And in my heart of hearts, I always knew that Henry David Thoreau was a hack from the moment I first laid my ears on his quote-unquote poetry. Just listen to this schlock. If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. If that wasn't an example of an author trying to make their own decisions seem virtuous, then it was at the very least clunky. I disliked the man from the moment I saw his stupid, smug face. How about this one? I went to live to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Sound okay enough? A little melodious, a little sentimental, a little exaggeratory, but of perhaps adequate quality? Well, imagine my distaste when I went on to find that this alleged woodsman was actually just squatting in a cabin owned by his mentor the whole time. And the more I learned, the more my original view of his character was confirmed. Here was a man who professed the virtues of solitude and deliberate living, while greatly depending upon others and mucking about aimlessly throughout most of his life. Here was a man who spoke of roughing it, and again, lived in a cabin of a friend's rent-free and very near broader civilization. Essentially the past equivalent of a Nepo baby. He was a man who spoke disparagingly of the broader workings of society and the means in which men conducted their lives, while seemingly priding himself on how much time he spent alone. The Lord only knows what kind of crazy, unsubstantiated rubbish this Henry David Thoreau guy could have written had he only had access to an internet message board, or a similarly socially insular group of people. Why do I care so much? That's actually a great question. Why do I care so much? I certainly don't like or even respect poetry, not even back then. The person I was hoping to meet, well, they had already died. They'd been dead for over 100 years. Plus, he wasn't even that well-received or popular, even in his own time. Very few of the people I've talked to these days even know who Thoreau is. And among the group of people who do, very few care or liked him in the first place. I have nothing to prove and nothing to gain that hasn't already become common knowledge or is of any real value whatsoever. And yet when the two metaphorical roads diverged in the yellow wood of my life, I took the one less traveled by. God, I hated metaphors. And poetry, for that matter. But here I was, for some reason, scouring the woods for the ghost of my least favorite poet in the hopes of murdering him again? Crap. Were ghosts even real? And even supposing they were, why the hell would the ghost of Henry David Thoreau be in the exact patch of woods I was looking for him? Insofar as I was aware, he, by extension his popular ghost, had literally no attachment to this place. I wasn't even in the US right now. Could ghosts be killed by mortal instruments? There was another interesting conundrum. By my count, I was 7 miles in. Didn't have my phone on me or anything, so this guess was just rooted in intuition. The very same intuition that informed me that the ghost of Henry David Thoreau resided in these woods, and that it was my destiny to kill him. That and my ability to dimly see the 7-mile trail marker in the far distance. Oh, I was going to wander lonely as a cloud all over his ass, and make a quiet, desperate man out of him yet, even if it took all night. Until at last I'd arrived. The thing from the poem. It was a fork in the road, which produced two nearly identical-looking paths trotting out the same. And at their sight, an epiphany. I'd finally realized why this was so important to me. It was because poetry was stupid. And not just stupid, but profoundly so. Poetry was so stupid that I knew its existence at all was a blight unto the world and an insult to the intelligence of every decent, responsible person. And I at last remembered what had triggered my extreme vitriol for the medium. Long ago, when I was really young and dumb, I had a poem that I really liked. It was foolish of me, I know, and feel free to laugh now, but it was the truth. Truth. At the time, I mistakenly believed that all poetry was trash, and all poetry had been a mistake, with one exception. And it was this one exception that made me hold on to hope that maybe poetry could one day be redeemed, that maybe, one day, By grace of the one true poem, all other poems might be shown the way, the truth, the light, and rendered better by association. Until one day I came upon something that would change my relationship with poetry forever, and reveal me for the fool I had always been. It was a joke. My favorite poem in the whole world, the one by Robert Frost, had been a joke the entire time. And I, alongside all the world, had been made a fool for ever indulging it. When it had said, though as for that their passing there had warned them really about the same, it had not been a succinct exploration of the difficulties of important decision-making in the moment. And when it said, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back, that had not been a commentary on the ceaseless flow of time. And when it had said, I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference, I'd assumed profundity and a written testament to an important decision made on the part of the author where there was none. It was a joke on a friend and nothing more. And academia and those college students had involuntarily misled the world and perpetuated and legitimized decades worth of misinformation, much like they often still do today. So naturally, with the erosion of my singular, tenuous basis for recognizing any redeeming qualities in all of poetry destroyed, nothing could appease my wrath toward the medium anymore. Poetry would pay for its sins through its death by my hand, or so help me God, I would go insane. Henry David Thoreau seemed as good a place to start as any, my personal least favorite poet, but a lot of other people's as well. But depending how good it felt for me to exercise the world of his presence, I figured it would be good form to hunt down all the other important ghosts of poetry's past as well. A lot of people my age had finished their degrees or trade school programs and crap, but by God, I took the road less traveled by. Before I knew it, the witching hour was upon me. 1862. The time which most closely corresponded with my target's first death. Within moments, my target would be upon me, and I would do my damnedest to bring about his second. Come at me, you coward! I proclaimed for all the world to hear. For as you probably already know, poets are naturally cowardly people who back away from fights and wars every chance they get, and so must be egged on by their public to do much of anything. After a few minutes, they weren't showing themselves. This was to be expected. And so, this time I tried again, but louder. Henry! I know you're there! Stop hiding in the bushes and show yourself! Henry was such a tease. It was one of my least favorite things about him. But sure enough, he was around. And sure enough, he showed himself to me right when I least would have liked it. There you are. Time to die. For a ghost, he died a lot quicker than I thought he would. Which I'll admit, kind of disturbed me. I mean, you would have thought that after being dead for so long, he would have had all kinds of crazy ghost powers. But I guess not. That wasn't even the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was that I could sense that a part of him had exited his ghostly vessel and had embedded itself deep within me, fractions of a second prior to me killing him. It was clear that Henry was a part of me now, and would eventually make an effort to communicate with or through me. And of course, he went and turned into a coyote upon the moment of his second death. But that was to be expected. Ghosts were always pulling crap like that. He also made me think I was tall, when I was really short the whole time I was in there. And for a long time I struggled to forgive him for that. But in retrospect, I suppose he might have had his reasons. Well, surprise, surprise. Who should I find waiting for me at the beginning of the trail on the way back to my car but the police? Chuckling to myself and shaking my head, I think in the moment I found myself mumbling, Thoreau, you bastard. Because you just know that man had friends in high places even now. even as he was dead as a ghost. But right before they stuffed me in the car for the mock trial, for which I now stand, Thoreau spoke to me one last time, and he said,
"Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth."
And I knew right there and then that I could no longer hate the man. That was why he said it, to keep me from hating him. And as I continued to turn this phrase over in my mind, it dawned on me that he had been right, damn it. He had been right. And so, as you rightly know, I vowed then and there in the back of that squad car to procure for myself a copy of Walden as a small gesture of repentance for my atheism from poetry all those years. And I've studied it every day ever since. And so if it pleases the court, I proclaim to you, it's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. Henry has already revealed to me the truth. And Raleigh did trick me into slashing up those animals and terrorizing those hikers. I think if you'll just be reasonable for a second, Your Honor, you'll find I only did what was necessary, of course. Of course, I've already forgiven him for forcing my hand, so... But if it pleases the court, then I would implore you to not make me pay for his mistake. Please, Your Honor, I am a woman of Henry now.
It was a good speech. More than a good speech, it had the potential to be an effective one. My reasoning was sound. My circumstances were sympathetic. My performance was impeccable. It was all well justified. It was a good speech. Now all that remained was to practice it over and over and over and over again, till they could all be made to appreciate the truth as well as I did. My audience was waiting for me in the morning, but I wouldn't be sleeping tonight. I had to do what Henry wanted. It was the only way. It was a good speech. Now all that remained was to practice. The end.
That was a story, all right. And as for me, I'm your friendly neighborhood Dork Lord, saying, in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, the die is cast, the skull has spoken, and the store of ill fortune is closing its doors. Be seeing you all next week, and do try to visit your local library between now and whenever we meet next, if you can find the time. Toodaloo!